Hello. I just figure out how to use. I don't know how to use the chat on here because I'm using my iPad. I might have to do it on my phone. So the purpose of this video is to read. Hi Tyler. Okay, I can see now. Hi Tyler. The purpose of this video is to read through some of Mama Zogbe's work, and I might make this a series. I feel like everybody should have this book. But I'm getting situated right now, so give me a hot second. I left something. In the other room. Alrighty. Please like and share this video. I should probably get on Instagram and tell people that I'm live. It would be wise if you're a serious student to grab a paper and a pen if you don't have this book already. Because there's a lot to discuss. And I like questions, so if you have questions, bring them up. If you have comments, share them. And I wonder if I turn the air on, will it be loud in here? Y'all let me know if the air is too loud. If it's too loud, I'll turn it off. I'll wait for a couple more people to come in. Y'all had a good weekend so far? They've been popping firecrackers since end of June, I want to say. They have not let up. Hopefully they don't start while I'm reading. That's really why I'm doing it at this hour, because I was going to get on here tonight, but people are still celebrating with fireworks. So I just feel like that would, and I mean, they have, I live in the South, so we be popping commercial grade fireworks and not just on holidays. On a random Tuesday, you might hear somebody outside with some Disney World type fireworks. So y'all, I'm so over social media. I'm using it to get this information out, but just logging in is such a sensory nightmare for me. Let me see. Too many distractions. But I need to let people know that I'm on here. Hi to whoever is in here. I can't read the chat right now, but I'm about to. Give me a second. Somebody's cutting their grass. Can y'all hear me well? Hi, my precious. Is it peace or please? Peace. Hi, Mofia. Hi, Tyler. Hey, y'all. How did you know me and Mami Wata have been growing together? She's calling all of her children right now. She's been... There's certain... Y'all ever have like that moment where... Especially for those of you... I'm assuming most of you are dreamers, diviners, in tune with cosmic forces. I have been, this book, let's start there. This book, the Sibyls, the first prophetess of Mami, Wata, the depth of the African prophecy by the Catholic Church. This book has put my entire existence into perspective. And the book that set it off for me, prior to me finding Mama Zogbe's work, is The Great Cosmic Mother, which I mean, I might go through this one day on here. I probably should. I know I will be doing this type of stuff on my Patreon. But my Patreon is women's only, but a lot of this information needs to be shared with everybody. So I might get on here and go through The Great Cosmic Mother one day, which would probably, it would take us a while to get through this together. But this book was written by Monica Sue, I want to say, it's SJOO, and Barbara Moore. I want to say Monica is from Switzerland. I think that's where she's from. But this put so much stuff into perspective, and then I was having a lot of stuff going on with water. Well, y'all have been walking with me for a while. And it's interesting because she wasn't coming up in her physical form, just her form through nature. she was showing up a lot. I was having a lot of dreams about tornadoes. I have a really good friend of mine who's really like a sister to me. We both connected because through other things in life, but we opened up to one another about our spiritual journey because we were both having these reoccurring dreams of tornadoes. I'm so sorry. My neighbors are cutting their yard. Can y'all hear me? Book ordered. Awesome. Anyways, let me stay focused because I don't want to go too... I'm speaking for my spirit today. This book is a great companion to this book. And the difference is Mama Zogbe has studied this book. Has written this book and has been able to piece together what we intuitively know to be true as Black women. Especially Black women who are open to their gifts, who have seen their mothers and their aunties and their grandmothers practice their gifts of healing, divination, the mothers of the church, the prayer warriors, the alchemists, the medicine women, the conjure women, the conjure men, the medicine men, the shamans. Those of you who are in touch with that, this book is going to put everything into perspective for you, because you're going to realize how all of this was we've been lied to for so many generations at this point that a lot of our elders don't even know the vastness of the truth. They know bits and pieces. What was that? They know bits and pieces, but it hasn't even occurred to them how much of our history was flipped and tainted. So I think I'm gonna stop there, and we're gonna get into the text. I need a pen. First things first. All right, so the Sibyls, the first prophetess of Mami Wata, demystifying the absence of the African ancestress as the first divine prophetess on earth. This book was written by Mama Zogbe, Chief Hunan Amagasi. This booklet is part of a series towards the reclamation of the religious heritage of the Diaspora Project. Vatican, divining serpent, derived from vatis, which equals diviner, and can, which means serpent. Vatican City and St. Peter's Basilica were built on the ancient pagan site called in Latin Vaticanus Mons or Vaticanus Cauli, which means hill or mountain of prophecy. The Hebrew definition of Vatic, Vatis or Vats, a seer, prophet, soothsayer, diviner, divination. Soothsayer, to act covertly, to use hidden arts, magic, to practice sorceries, mysteries. Diviner means witchcraft, tells fortunes, or a fortune teller. Bewitch, to consult the spirit of the dead, to practice magic. If you grab this book, you're going to see a lot of illustrations. This one is of a map. And this is a Sibyl. And I'm going to go through, let me see. Yeah, I'll read this. So in the map, they're showing the real ancient Babylon located in southern Egypt, the Upper Egypt. Babylon in Egypt has now been removed from modern maps. Munster, a linguist and mathematician who initially taught Hebrew in Heidelberg, is generally regarded as one of the three most important map makers of the 16th century. Justin tells the Greeks that they may find the true religion in the ancient Babylonian Sibyl, who came to Cuma and there gave her oracles, which Plato admired as divine. Clemens Romanus also quotes the Sibyls in his epistle to the Corinthians. They are also quoted by Theophilus, Antiochus, Athenagoras, Firmianus, Lactantius, and Eusebius, St. Augustine, and Flores. I probably just murdered all of that, but forgive me. This is a quote out of Anacalypsis on page 747, written by Geoffrey Higgins. Okay. So, it is not surprising that the Sicilian terracottas, which we have seen embrace so large a field of Oriental, East African, that's what Oriental is referring to, Egyptian, Greek, and Roman mythology, should also contain illustrations of oracular beings and virgin or pagan prophetesses who played an important part in the rise of Christianity, whose books were largely used by the ancient fathers of the church against the pagans, and whose prophecies did not fall before the light of a new religion for nearly 4 centuries after the advent of Jesus. This is why in one of my, I'm calling threads tweets because I got off Twitter and it ended up on threads. But this is why I said on threads that Jesus is really ISIS. And we'll talk about that in another video. So let me read the foreword. Thinking outside the Western patriarchal box, the idea that African religious traditions, ritual practices, social customs, divine prophecy, and fundamental beliefs once dominated both the secular and non-secular world in ancient times seems hard to imagine. Even more so, the notion that African women, the oldest human beings on the planet, laid the theological foundation for Judaism, Hinduism, Christianity, and Islam under the auspices of the Black matriarchs seems even more incredible. Considering the current status of African women around the world, one could hardly be convinced that her matriarchal presence and the enormous influence she wielded in the ancient world had far exceeded the limited physical, cultural, geographical, and political designations of which Africa and her religions are confined today. One could hardly imagine, too, that African religions have reached very high levels of theological and ritual development, and that they were the original home of the world's first great oracles, prophetess, and prophets. The absence of African women in world history as major players, as opposed to exceptions to the norm or mere appendages of great men, has been problematic and disturbing at best. For the first time, her story is being unearthed, revealed, and told. This is the absence of African women in world history as major players, as opposed to exceptions to the norm, or mere appendages of great men, has been problematic and disturbing at best. What y'all thinking? Book ordered, thank you. Yes, you on it. She in here preaching. I want to remind y'all that, especially any men viewing, that when Black women speak their truth, and when Black women are fully in their power and expressing it without restraint, we seem to step on, Black men specifically, we seem to step on y'all's toes. We seem to hurt your egos. We seem to be disruptive in y'all's eyes, and we seem to be belittling you, and all these other emotions come up for you. But although those emotions are valid, y'all have to understand that we're simply remembering the truth. We're remembering who we are. We're remembering who our mothers are. And we are all paying for the sins of our fathers, especially Black women. It's not to negate what Black men are going through. This is a very complex issue. Yeah. It's not to negate what y'all are going through. We're trying to get y'all to understand who we are so that you can remember who you are. Anyways. Alright, so first prophetesses in the world. The first prophets of Mami Wata were African women. They were called Sibyls, meaning that they were Mami Wata priestesses and priests of the Onens, I don't know this word, Oannes, but I've seen it. The more advanced of this matriarchal divine order are known as the Amagazis of West Africa today. They can call up the dead and even the souls of the living. They were the ancient oracle used in ancient Greece, Rome, and Babylon. Their prophecies are the oldest in the world. It is through the divine blood of these Sibyl priestesses that the patriarchal kingships of the pharaohs, the Hebrew prophets, and the Chaldean priests were born. I was just telling somebody, a friend of mine, I was just telling them they need to get into numerology, specifically Chaldean numerology, which is the companion to Vedic astrology, because we need more Black melanated men to take our sciences seriously and to have a decent understanding of it. But I always say sometimes it's kind of scary to give men things because the intent has to be pure. We have already disrespected and disobeyed our mother, the great mother. So when she gives us these tools and when she puts you on path to meet certain people that give you certain knowledge and information, it's your responsibility to do right by that information, to do right by that blessing. Anyways, the great Sibyls, divine oracles of the ancestors and God. Webster's dictionary defines a Sibyl as a female prophet, a woman able to utter the oracles and prophecies of a god, or a woman who can foretell the future. Conversely, under the bitter Hebrew patriarchs, the Sibyls are condemned in their Bible as Bahaleth O, meaning evil serpent spirit, or mistress of the python. Sibyl, Black Dove's original Holy Spirit. Universally known as the Black Doves, the Sibyl referred to themselves as sisters of Isis and sometimes prophetesses of the Black Diana. The doves symbolize the sacred soul or Holy Spirit, an Afro-mystical symbol later adopted by the Christians. It was the Sibyl matriarchal groups who settled at Asia Minor, ancient Turkey, and installed Mami's worship more than 2,500 years before the Doric or Greek and Turk invasions. Okay, so I'm learning a lot. I knew about the doves. I can't remember where I learned that from. I've never heard the term Doric for the Greeks. To mark my book, y'all. Hold on. So Mami, whom they knew as Lacoon with her serpents, was known as the manifestation of the divine Logos, with holy temples scattered all throughout Asia Minor, Cushitic Mitanni Empire, and in Manoa and Mycenae, the Aegean Islands. Archaeological pottery shards date back, archaeological pottery shards date the Black descendants of the Libyan, Garamantes, and other African clans who had settled into ancient Babylon and elsewhere before the flood to have arrived in Manoa as early as 4000 BCE. My God. The present day Iwe and I believe that's Benin in Togo, if I'm not mistaken. Because y'all have to remember that a majority of the groups that are in West Africa now, or on the coast of West Africa, were coming from East Africa because they were being pushed out. Because we have to remember that this idea that patriarchs could rule, because we've always had patriarchs, you need strong male leadership, but the idea that they could rule, that they had divine authority to rule nations without the matrifocal system that was supposed to keep everything in balance, that was blasphemous. So what happened is you see all of these tribes start to pop up and scatter here, there, and this way. They were scattering, they were leaving different areas because of what was happening to their traditions, because it was affecting, it had a lot of karmic implications, what they were doing. But we'll get to that part. I'm just having a bunch of realizations. So, hailed as one of the 7 wonders of the world, these sacred temples were maintained by the Sibyls and a contingent of Vestal virgin priestesses and eunuchs. When I was a kid, I used to have some of the most vivid rememberings of these places that look like something in a video game. Something you can't even imagine. They were rememberings. And I was just visiting too. Because these places existed, and those of us who are connected to Mami and are open to what she has to share with us can vividly see all of these things. Okay, so Vatican, original sacerdotal seat of Sibyls. Africans, Black Buddhists, Umbrians, and Black Etruscans, etc., erected civilizations in what is now Italy, thousands of years before the Anglo-Romans arrived. What is now called the seat of the Vatican in Italy was originally the sacerdotal seat of the ancient Black Sibyls. As the first established sacerdotal African matriarchs, the Sibyls' cultural and religious impact was arguably the most profound on ancient civilization that modern history has ever revealed or cared to admit. From Mesopotamia to Libya, Mizoram, which is Kemet, or Egypt, is what we call it today, Ionia, Manoa, Peloponnese, which is Turkey, and Mycenae, which is Greece, and later Rome, the Sibyls were the primary divine Vatican and absolute moral authority. Remember what Vatican means. Remember the etymology of the word. When we're studying this type of stuff, we have to dig deeper than the definition and get into etymology. Okay, so for centuries, the Grecian islands of Delos, Dodona, Delphi, and the Temple of Mami in ancient Libya were the ecclesiastical and moral hub of religious, social, and international political activity. It was under the theocratic governance of the Sibyls as queen mothers that African matriarchal culture reached its golden age of achievement in medicine, religion, astronomy, philosophy, law, architecture, music, art, and social sophistication. Yes, exactly. Same dream. My precious, I don't think my brother would mind if I said something. My baby brother, we're 4 years apart. And when we were kids, my whole family is, everybody dreams. When we were children, his room was across the hall from mine, separated by like a bathroom in the hallway. And we would have the same dreams. We would wake up at the same time from the dream. We would see each other in the dreams. We were traveling. We were traveling. I have full control of my dreams, very lucid. I could get up and, go to the bathroom or toss and turn and go right back to my dream, which is really just, I was traveling. He was the same way. And we would see each other in our dreams. We had a lot of dreams that when we woke up, we would talk about them because we were dreaming the same thing. And that's what I'm trying to get men to understand is we're still of the mother. Everybody is of the mother. The gifts that you have, you got them from your mother, the great mother. Yeah. We coming for all of our curriculums. I swear we are, because medicine, religion, astronomy, philosophy, law, architecture, music, art, and social sophistication. You don't have to tell me. I was blessed to be raised in a family full of just, even if you didn't have a formal education, you was going to be educated. You was going to know something, and you were going to know it well, and you were going to be able to teach it. That's on both sides of my family. I have family members that made great accomplishments. I mean, amazing accomplishments for the time, especially being Black and in the South. But my family members that didn't receive a formal education were still very knowledgeable. And what I'm thinking about is especially the women who were very knowledgeable about childbirth, about herbs, about spirit and how spirit works. Just wise women. Farmers, healers, nurses. Anywho, Sibyls, heal sick, raise dead, long before Christ. As the sole spiritual authority in the ancient world, the Sibyls were famous for uttering warnings and admonitions to the villages, cities, and ancient kingdoms, including their leaders. Prophesying their doom or fulfilling their hopes and restoring lost glory. They'd right moral wrongs and punish offenders of the divine law. Centuries before Christ, they were known to heal the sick, restore dignity and strength to the weak, and sight to the blind. They were famous for curing lameness, epileptics, deaf mutes, and lepers. They were said to cast out demons and even to raise up the dead. This last reference is probably meant to call up and materialize the spirit of a dead person. For example, the Sibyl named Hierophile, residing in Cumaean, Rome, was famed for calling up the spirit of the Apostle Samuel from the dead. I know to be true that all of my illnesses are illnesses that have only been able to be restored through spirit. And traditional healing incorporates the essence of the plants and materials that we have available to us here, but it's not without the essence of the mother or the spiritual divine essence that's needed to, you have to put both of them together. Both heaven and earth have to come together for somebody to receive full healing. I was epileptic at one point. All of a sudden I was having seizures, and then the seizures just went away. But what I vividly remember is my baby brother pulling me out of the pool. I had a seizure in the pool, y'all. My baby brother pulled me out the pool and saved my life. And I don't know if it was that same week, probably not. It's really a blur. But we went to church, and my grandmother must have made a request, and I just remember my brother being recognized for what he did, and so many prayers being put on us via the mothers of the church. All right, so Sibyl's Divine Oracle basis for, let me back up. The last reference is probably meant to call up and materialize the spirit of a dead person. Okay. So the Sibyls Divine Oracle Basis for Western Bible. This is going to blow your mind. However, the Sibyls' most significant contribution were their famous oracles containing the divine prophecies that the world uttered in transpossession. That they would utter in transpossession. These prophecies would be carefully written down by their assistants and compiled into books. These prophetic proses were the basis for Greek and Roman tragedies and plays. These prophetic books were later collected by the Roman authorities and soon became the sole and undisputed precursor to the Western Christian Bible, and would later lay the ecclesiastical foundation of Western civilization. So those books that our mothers still, those of you who are raised in Christian households, those books that our mothers study and still pull from. I got a grandma who went to church and was a faithful member of the church and still is to this day. And she knows the Bible through and through. But I also have grandmothers and elders that would use the Bible for healing work, for protection work, to curse, you know. So the way that you use the tool may be different, but the ashe is still in there. It's just that so much has been flipped around. I still use my Bible in conjure work, but I change certain things that don't resonate with me. But if you read the Old Testament, you'll start to see how they changed parts of the story and the characters so they could fit a certain political narrative. Because the Bible that we have now is not, the Christian theology, the Christian philosophy that we are familiar with now is very different than its original prophecy. Okay, so over the millenniums, other Sibyl prophecies, oracles, and revelations were systematically retrieved and purchased. They were stolen or haphazardly collected by various means all throughout the ancient world where their temples existed. It was these books that would later be plagiarized, revised, or altered, and compiled into one holy book known as the Sibylline Oracles. They would later become the center of the bitter doctrinal or heresy wars, which is really, it means it's referring to the knowledge of women, between the warring Levitical Jews and the emerging Roman Vatican authority. As the African matriarchal power began to decline and her colonies taken over by foreign conquerors, it was the thrones and sacerdotal power and prophecies of the Sibyls that was stolen from them by the emerging Roman Church. Their religions were later labeled as pagan, or heathen, under a now racialist Roman authority. The emerging Roman Church, in their ignorance and ambition, acquired and doctored the Levite Jews, corrupted versions of the Sibyl prophecies until one could hardly distinguish one forgery from the other. Some of these prophetic books were used by the Vatican to compile what is known today as the Judeo-Christian Bible, crediting their authorship to conspicuous Roman and other male prophets. Those books for which it was hard to conceal Their African matriarchal origins were simply destroyed and relegated to heresy. So basically, the Roman Church got a hold of the corrupted versions of the Sibyl prophecies. And that's why I said they were leaving. Ooh, we left East Africa and scattered about and started moving to the West because so much bullshit was happening. She hasn't mentioned the, why can't I think of the name? Not the transatlantic slave trade, but the slave trade prior to that was running through Africa and India. Which now that I think about it, it was probably just the trade routes that they had already established that they decided, okay, so we already are trading goods. Let's start trading human beings. Anyways, the first people to turn on Mami Wata and her priestesshood were black men. So, because the Levitical Jews were black men. The Levitical Jews took the Sibylline prophecies, put their sauce on it, and by sauce I mean filth, and then gave it they didn't give it. And then the Roman Church got a hold of the corrupted prophecies that the Levite Jews had. And they used that to establish the books of the Bible that were later canonized to become the Holy Bible. This is everything I needed to hear today. You are right on time. This is so heavy for me. It's heavy in a good way, but it makes me want to cry. So let me focus. Let me focus. I'm glad you can be here. So, some of these prophetic books were used by the Vatican to compile what is known today as the Judeo-Christian Bible, crediting their authorship to conspicuous Roman and other male prophets. Those books for which it was too hard to conceal their African matriarchal origins were simply destroyed or relegated to heresy. Gender of God, original feminine. The gender of God, the little God, little G-O-D, was later changed from feminine to masculine. Originally, within each prophetic verse, it is claimed the Sibyls made praises to Mami as Our Lady and proclaimed that she was greater than any other god in the world. Roman senator Cicero, the orator, writes that the last three books of the Sibyl hierophile was deliberately burned in fire by the Roman governor Stilicon the tyrant. Okay, so we just talked about hierophile. She was a Sibyl or a priestess, meaning she was prophetess of the words of the Great Mother. And she would take her prophecies and she would write them down in books, which is why I'm always telling y'all to write down your dreams. And the Roman governor Stilicon the tyrant, let's see, where he goes burned all of her books. Stilicon was eternally hated by all of Rome for this sacrilegious act which prompted a universal reaction from poets, scholars, and musicians alike. So worshipped was the Sibyl of Cumaea that she was immortalized by all of Rome in one of her appellations, Europa, for which Europe is allegedly named. Should be in our face. So any occultist will tell you, this is why we study media a lot of the time. If you want to manipulate karma to some extent, if you make it plain what is about to happen, I don't want to say you eliminate karma, but you'll see that you kind of acquire some sort of grace or mercy. So naming Europe after the Sibyl of Cumaea was a way for them to try and pay off some sort of karmic debt towards the sacrilegious act towards the Great Mother. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense? It's kind of like, this is a good example, that movie that Michelle Obama was a part of. What was she, like a producer or something like that? The movie that they just put out about what would happen if it wasn't the end of the world. What was the name of the movie? Damn. It's escaping me. I can't think of the name of the movie, but basically, if you watch it, they are telling you like, hey y'all, eventually America gonna shut down, okay? We don't know how long it's gonna be, but eventually we're gonna have power grid issues. Ain't gonna be no power, ain't gonna be no internet. Y'all gonna have to figure it out for yourselves. That's basically what the movie is telling us. What would you do if the government is your only source of self-sufficiency? Which is really not self-sufficiency. What would you do if the government was to collapse? Basically, that's what that movie was about. They share this information with us so that those who can see it and be prepared, but it's also a way for them to say, I'm not hiding the truth. I put it out there. I shared what I could share, but they do it in code. And it's only people who enjoy decoding, like occultists, that see the messages in these films. That's what that just made me think of. Everything is really in plain sight. And it's hard for people to listen to people that can see what they can't see. And that is because we have gone away from trusting the intuition, the intuitive aspects of ourselves, especially when it's coming from Black women. Indigenous women, melanated women. Civil groups, original persecuted ones. It was the African traditional religionist groups and not the so-called Christians who were the actual ones persecuted and finally enslaved. It was the Sibyl style of prophecy and magic that would later be imitated by a militant faction from these patriarchal Levitical groups whom, envious of her global positioning, rebelled the divine matriarchal orders and seized their temples and overthrew their priestesshood. In their jealousy, hatred, and rebellion of her divine authority, the Levitical Jews elevated their original minor deity, Jehovah, as an insult to her. Together, Jehovah and his patriarchal clan usurped her sacerdotal order and secular power, and from that moment on, they have worn it as their own. Millions of her people were murdered or enslaved, and millions scattered to the four winds all across the world. The historical evidence shows that it was these groups and not the Christians who were the actual ones persecuted and finally enslaved. The New Testament is actually a historical chronicle of the final destruction of all remnants of the African matriarchal authority. I've said that before, that when you read the New Testament, you see, you have to get curious about who are these people that they are calling heathens and saying, no, you have to tear down your statues and get rid of your idols. And why do we need to do that? Everything's been fine. We've been good. We were doing our thing, y'all were doing yours. So why all of a sudden you need to come through and force your belief system on an already thriving population? And we know why. But in order to usurp a kingdom like this, it has to be the person closest to you to actually do it. And that's the problem. Millions of her people were murdered or enslaved, and millions scattered to the four winds all across the world. That's us. Books that were politically and not divinely inspired, which is why the Levitical Jews, enemies of the Roman Church, refused to recognize them as authentic. I'm calling it right back. Sibyl traditions live on in West Africa. The history of the Sibyls is not entirely dead. In West Africa, there lives a matriarchal order of women who call up the dead. Many lineages of these women were also sold into slavery in America. Many Black women are born not knowing that their suffering stems from their disconnection with their ancient rights and spiritual duty to continue the work of their ancient mothers. The suppression of the ancient history of the African matriarchs and their contributions to world religion, magic, spirituality, and prophecy is one of the greatest cover-ups and divine tragedies in human history. This author remains convinced that until this history is restored and African women are accorded their rightful place in the world, there will probably never be any peace. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. The Sibyls, the first prophetesses of Mami. This is the picture. Have I been on for an hour yet? Close to it. What did you say, Precious? That's really the heaviest heart that it was our love, like the love of my life turned back on me. That betrayal goes back eons, lifetimes. It and the disrespect of it all, because everything is alive. Everything is alive. The only difference between me and this table is the fact that we are vibrating at different speeds. That's why I can't take my hand and go through the table. If I could match my vibration to match the table, we would be one. You see what I'm saying? The planets, the earth, it's alive. And we're living on her. This is her domain. So this is like disrespecting in the most literal sense. This is like disrespecting your mother in the nastiest way for years on end, and then teaching your children to do the same thing. That's basically what we have been doing. And this is also why we have to heal. Women and men have to heal their mother wounds. You have to, everybody has them in some shape or fashion, especially in our community. But as a society, we all have mother wounds because we've grown up in a society that doesn't allow women to be the fullest expression of themselves without consequence. And so we grow up around women who did the best with what was available to them. But without certain rites and rituals, and I've said this before, because after I gave birth to my daughter, she's the one that really put me on this path, because I was over all of this shit. All of it. I was damn near atheist. Because the logic, I just felt like I was being lied to, and that's true, I was. But the logic was missing in so much. It wasn't until I had my child and my magic started showing up in ways that was undeniable, paranormal, if you will, that I started doing my own searching and realized I was only going to find the answers if I went within. And that opened up so many gifts, spiritual gifts, that are connected to my lineage. Mediumship, the gift of sight, discernment, healing, all of that, so much opened up for me. But it's because I had to recognize that I just went through an initiation. I already had experiences near puberty. But then years later, almost a decade later, I think I was 24 when I was 24, about to turn 25, I think, somewhere around there. I gave birth to my daughter when I turned 25, around 25. But basically a decade later, I'm going through another initiation without full understanding of what it is. I had to do my own searching with the help of my ancestors, with the help of my mothers, my great-grandmothers who are deceased, showed me everything in dreams. They started showing me little bits and pieces of stuff that I needed to know, that I needed to remember. And because I was open to that, that led me down the path of finding the right resources and running into elders that could put more into context. But even then, you run into elders that have no knowledge of this. They have no knowledge of our matriarchal kingdoms. And if they do have knowledge of it, they don't understand how important the type of defilement that happened, and how we'll never have retribution if we don't acknowledge what happened, and if we don't create systems that allow us to rebuild what our mothers had built in the first place. Because you're not going to be able to rebuild what they had with the type of systems that we have in place today. The whole thing has to be torn apart. This shit is ridiculous. Anyways, I'm going to read this last page. And then I have to get off of here for a minute. Alright. Above is a medieval Roman catacomb illustrating a Mami, a Sibyl priestess, Amagazi, reposed against the sacred ark, or Omfe, which is an ancestral oracle. It is topped with Agbandoto, the first fruits offering to Mami. The Omfe is laced with a garland of mistletoe sacred to the African thunder god, Zeus, also known as Dionysus. I don't want to mess this up. Asclepius and Bacchus. Resting in her hand, Asclepius, the African ancestral oracular serpent, emanating around her head in the golden nimbus halo. So that halo that you see around all of the saints, by the way, there's over like 3,000 saints, I want to say. That halo was given to her, given to Mami, to represent her power. A pre-Christian solar symbol representing her muse or avatar status. The feminine word Wata, or muse. The masculine Moses is the exact same equivalent as Messiah or Savior, meaning bearers of divine truth and light. Additionally, the word mago is the feminine counterpart to the word magi, meaning masters of divine spirit and esoteric knowledge. That's where you get the words like magician, magistrate, magic. The use of mermaid imagery in the Mami Wata Vodou tradition has been a dominant feature since the beginning of time. The oldest representations of Isis, Mami, Artigatis, Awusa, Densu, and Ishtar were that of a serpent, fish, and mermaid. During ancient times, African and Afro-Alamite matriarchal religions reached high levels of civilization, and it is architecture, sacerdotal rites, elaborate vestments, and orgiastic possessions, celebrations covered the entire ancient world. They dominated the religious, political, and popular cultures of the cultures of other African esoteric priesthoods of colonial and classical Greece and Rome. The prophecies and wisdom of the Sibyls and other African esoteric priesthoods were central to Christianity's ecclesiastical development and Levitical Judaism's survival. After the militaristic defeat and decline of African patriarchal world hegemony, I'll never know how to say that word, hegemony, the Roman Church began to emerge as an imperialist, inquisitorial power. They then exploited and plagiarized the Sibyl prophecies and usurped their sacred rights and Vatican seat of divine power in Italy. They credited their prophetic works to obscure white males, whom they labeled as prophets and saints, They then waged holy war against the Sibyls, later accusing them of Taurian, black heathenism. The Roman catacombs became the burial mausoleums for many of these persecuted and murdered African martyrs. Yeah. Y'all ever think about whose bodies, like, who do they say that the catacombs, I don't know, I've never looked that up. Well, in recent years. Who, have you ever thought about who's laying in those catacombs in Italy? They probably tell people they're like thieves and criminals and all that stuff. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but I'm gonna look that up. The Sibyls and others were buried by their followers in these dark, musty tombs, their beloved entering late at night to offer food, drink, prayer, and song. The use of undergrounds in ancient Egyptian and Afro-Chaldean religious custom can be likened to the slave survival practices in America. They are an important historical glimpse into the socio-religious and political world of the Afro-Greco-Romans as they fought for their religious and cultural survival. Yes, I've absolutely thought about it. When I was a kid, I used to watch the Travel Channel. I used to watch the Travel Channel and the History Channel. And I remember seeing the catacombs on one of those channels. And I just thought it was so interesting and I was drawn to it and I wanted to visit it. It had to be on one of those shows for like maybe haunted houses or stuff like that. I've always been so interested in the dead. More so than the living in a lot of cases. But to know and to feel. Oh my gosh. It's so disrespectful in ways that I don't even want to think about because I'm going to be mad for like 2 weeks. It's going to take me a minute to come back down. But the fact that they now give tours of those catacombs. Instead of having people, that should be a Mecca. That should be a place of pilgrimage. But instead, you can do a walkthrough tour and see all the stacked up bodies. Child, my granny calling me. So I'm gonna have to come back on here later. But we are going to stop our reading here. Okay, so the next time I come back, we'll be picking up on page 12. And I hope that you all can join me. If you can't join me, catch the replay. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel, like the video, share my channel, grab this book, catch the replay, and I will see y'all in the next video.